My friend John was working at the train station. He was the security guard of the train station. When he went to work at night on the day of the incident, he realized that things were strange. He went to check the rail switch, but couldn't find it in the dark. He said nothing happened for a long time and didn't care. When he got back to the station, he fell asleep. In his dream, he saw 2 trains crashing. He woke up covered in sweat and thought it was a bad nightmare. He said, and turned on the television. When he saw the news of the train accident on the breaking news on television, he was scared and confused about what to do. He immediately took a flashlight and went to check the rail switch. After walking about 500 meters, he reached the switch and realized that the switch had been tampered with. He saw smoke rising 1 kilometer away. When he ran to look, he saw that 2 trains had collided and he immediately ran to help. There were dead and injured people everywhere. Then he fainted, and when he woke up, he found himself in the forest 50 kilometers away from the train station. He immediately went to the nearest road and asked for help. One of the cars passing by took John into his car. John got out of the car at the train station. The television was still on, but there was no train accident in any of the breaking news. In fact, there was no important incident that night across the country. He couldn't make sense of what was happening. 3 months have passed since this incident. John's wife and her children decided to visit their mother and bought train tickets. They set out on Friday evening, but John couldn't go because he was working. That night he fell asleep again and woke up with the sound of an explosion, having had a nightmare 3 months ago. When he went out and looked, he saw smoke rising. When he ran for help and saw the bodies of his wife and children in the 12th carriage, he collapsed. When he came to, he wished to be in the forest like that night, but he woke up next to the corpses of his family. He lost his entire family that night. That evening, my friend Ellen and I decided to watch a documentary. My cousin had a huge box of old documentaries from his deceased great-grandfather. We started to dig through the box, but we couldn't find an interesting documentary. When the last box was empty, my hand touched a height on the right side of the cardboard box. It looked like something was stuck between 2 pieces of cardboard on the right side of the box. I tore open the box and looked at the height. It was a CD case. It said Life of the Dead, an ordinary documentary. My friend was surprised, because as he said, he knew this huge archive by name and had never seen such a documentary before. We were both going to watch this strange documentary for the first time. I opened the box. Inside was a CD with a black front. We sat in front of the television. Ellen had turned on the CD player and was asking me to insert the CD. I was hesitant about this because I was afraid of being afraid. It was such a strange feeling to be afraid of being afraid, it's even hard to explain. At that moment, Ellen snatched the CD from my hand and inserted it into the device. "You're not afraid of this stupid thing, are you?" He was a brave man, but I know very well that too much courage is not good. The documentary has begun. We were surprised when we looked at its duration. It was a short 3-minute documentary. Maybe the rest of it was corrupted. We would have to wait to find out. Ellen pressed play on the remote and the documentary began. It was a scary documentary, as I expected. Ellen just stared at the screen. Graves and corpses were displayed as photographs on the screen. My heart would explode. Even Ellen's bravery wasn't enough. At the 30th second, Ellen took the remote control to turn it off when a voice started speaking. "The dead are not as dead as you think. When they die, they continue their existence in other dimensions of life. A dead man can talk to you if he wants." It was really ridiculous. Ellen couldn't stand this nonsense, so she hung up. It was a disgusting documentary. I'm going to WC. When Ellen went to the bathroom, I was left alone in the room. My eyes went to the clock. It was past 8:20. Minutes passed and Ellen did not return from the sink. I got curious and followed him. When I entered the sink, Ellen was just lying on the floor. There was no wound or blood. I was shocked. I touched Ellen, afraid. It was as cold as an ice tank. I checked his pulse. He wasn't throwing. I was very scared. I called the ambulance and asked for help. They put Ellen in the ambulance and me next to her. A short time later, I was in the hospital crying over Ellen, who was wearing a white sheet. Meanwhile, the expert who examined the body came to me and started talking. "When did you find this body?" It's been at least 3 days since this person died. That's when that disgusting voice echoed in my mind. A dead person can talk to you if he wants. Princess Amun-Ra was an Egyptian princess who lived in 1500 BC. She was buried on the banks of the Nile River. In the 1880s, 4 rich British people found the coffin of her princess while excavating in Luxor and bought it for a lot of money. Later, one of the men is seen walking into the desert and never comes back. The other 2 go bankrupt, and the third is accidentally shot by an Egyptian. But the mummy still reaches England. A rich businessman from London buys the mummy. But when his family is injured in the accident and a fire breaks out in his house, he finds the solution by donating the mummy to the British Museum. While the mummy was being carried to the museum, it suddenly turned upside down and fell on the workers, one of whom broke his leg, and the other worker, although healthy, died 2 days later. When the mummy is placed in the Egyptian section of the museum, troubles come one after another. The night guards say that they hear hammering and crying sounds coming from the mummy. When a guard is found dead on duty, the other guards get scared and quit their job. The cleaners refuse to clean the mummy. Finally, the authorities take the mummy to the basement and display only the sarcophagus. Finally, all this reaches the ears of the journalists. A photographer takes a picture of the mummy. A terrible human face appears in the official press. The man goes to the bedroom, closes the door and then shoots himself. Shortly after, a collector buys the mummy, but when troubles happen to him, including deaths, the man lifts the mummy to the attic and calls Madame Helena Blavatsky, an expert on magical powers. The woman feels very intense evil forces at home. When the man asks the woman to expel these evil forces, the woman says that it is impossible to exorcise them, get rid of them as soon as possible. But no museum wants the mummy, which caused the death of 20 people in 10 years. Finally, an American archaeologist and chess master, William T. Stead, buys the mummy by paying a large amount of money and wants to take it from England to New York by ship. However, because he is afraid that they will not take the mummy on board because of his bad reputation, he hides the mummy under a new Renault car. As you guessed it, the ship is Titanic. The man does not tell anyone the truth until the day before the disaster. And on April 14, 1912, Amun-Ra sank with 1,500 passengers. Changi Hospital, located in Singapore, has been the subject of many horror stories over the years. It is said to be one of the most haunted places in the country, with numerous reports of paranormal activity and ghost sightings. The hospital was originally built in 1935 as a British military hospital and was used by the Japanese as a prison camp during World War II. It is believed that the hospital's dark past is responsible for the supernatural occurrences that have been reported there. The hospital has a long and tragic history. During the war, it was used by the Japanese as a prison camp, where they tortured and executed many prisoners. The hospital was also used to house prisoners of war who were suffering from diseases such as cholera, dysentery, and malaria. Many of these prisoners died in the hospital and were buried in unmarked graves on the hospital grounds. After the war, the hospital was used by the British military and later by the Singapore government as a general hospital. Despite its new purpose, the hospital's past continued to haunt it. Many patients and staff reported seeing ghostly figures, hearing strange noises, and feeling a sense of unease while in the hospital. One of the most famous ghost stories associated with Changi Hospital is the story of the Lady in White. According to legend, a young woman was admitted to the hospital in the 1950s. She was suffering from tuberculosis and was placed in a ward on the 3rd floor of the hospital. Despite the efforts of the doctors and nurses, she eventually died of the disease. After her death, many patients and staff reported seeing a ghostly figure of a young woman in a white dress wandering the halls of the hospital. Some believe that she is still looking for the cure that eluded her in life. Another ghostly legend associated with Changi Hospital is the story of the headless ghost. According to this tale, a Japanese soldier was beheaded in the hospital during World War II. His headless body was buried in a mass grave on the hospital grounds. Since then, many people have reported seeing a headless ghost wandering the halls of the hospital. There have also been reports of other supernatural occurrences in the hospital. patients and staff have reported seeing ghostly figures, hearing strange noises, and feeling a sense of unease while in the hospital. Some have even claimed to have been physically touched by unseen forces. Despite the numerous reports of paranormal activity, the Singapore government has never officially recognized the hospital as being haunted. However, many people continue to visit the hospital in search of a paranormal experience. Some even claim to have captured photographic evidence of ghosts while visiting the hospital.
Leaving the operating room, the doctor took the elevator to go down to his office on the 4th floor. There was also a patient with him. The elevator stopped at the 8th floor and the doors opened. A little boy was standing in front of the elevator door. "Is it coming down?" asked the boy. The doctor examined the child carefully and answered, "No, he's going up." He pressed the button and the elevator doors closed. The patient next to him turned to the doctor and asked, "Why didn't you let the child get into the elevator with us? We were already going down." "Doctor, the child was already dead. He died of leukemia the other day." "How did you know he was dead?" asked the patient. "Didn't you see the blue bracelet on his left wrist? They mark the dead with a blue bracelet so they can be taken to the morgue," said the doctor. "Is it like mine?" said the patient, showing his wristband to the doctor.